Hello everyone, this is Persephone. I'm about to go out, that's why I'm wearing a mask and all, but I really want to talk about this, so we're going to talk looking like this and not in the usual I'm showing my boobs for views style that I have on YouTube. So today we're going to discuss enmeshment trauma. It's something that I realized I struggled with for a very long time, and I believe a lot of the people in my audience, especially beta men, may struggle with it too. Before we start, let me tell you, I'm not a mental health professional, I just share things I find interesting. If you can seek therapy online and if you can do your own research, please do so. I don't want to take the channel to a direction where we have some kind of form of messianism and people think I have all the answers. I don't. It's a learning process and that's what's good about it and not boring. That being said, I'm going to start with the basics here. What is enmeshment? Enmeshment practically means that you are in a family, but there is no actual individuation. And every time you try to individuate to be yourself, you get punished. How do things get to that point? May happen for many reasons. For example, your parents could be mentally ill. It could be a generational abuse thing that their parents were enmeshed and they also replicated the same dynamics in their family. I'm going to use examples from myself and people I know while I talk because I think this helps a lot to not just, be like a philosopher rambling. And I'm going to start by saying that I studied so much about narcissism and personality disorders, and I used to think that if you just make enough money and go no contact or very low contact, you solve the problem. And I realized that this is not the case. Of course, having money is an essential element of getting out of the problem, but if you have been enmeshed all of your life, which I have been, I realized, there is a pretty high chance you may not even know who you are, or you may not be who you think you are. And what do I mean by that? I have started to doubt many things that people said about me. For example, that I'm borderline. I really doubt that diagnosis, especially after I saw Dr. Wagner's video, who is an expert in narcissism, that he says that people under extreme distress may exhibit symptoms of borderline personality disorder temporarily, but those symptoms subside when they get removed from the abusive environment. And the only time that I was actually diagnosed as a borderline is when I was 17 and living with my extremely crazy mother. And after that, I looked at many other channels and videos of borderline people, and I have to say that as an adult, I don't have any of those symptoms, in the sense of I upload almost every day. I film every day. I don't upload every day on YouTube for 3 years straight. Once I have an opinion about someone that is very bad, it's because they backstabbed me, and I don't have idealizing and discarding circles. And a lot of other things like that. So I started to get upset, and that led me to the research about enmeshment. What happens is that usually you come from a very dysfunctional household. One case that the parent gets enmeshed is when they are a single parent and they don't have a support system, so they try to cover their emotional needs from their child. That can happen in many ways. Another way is that both parents are very mentally ill, or one is very mentally ill and the other one is covering them up. Another case is that both parents are very incompatible but they cannot divorce, or they have problems that they cannot solve, or they don't know how to solve them. For example, that they are religious and they don't want to divorce, or they're very poor. And a lot of it has to do with religious beliefs and traditional beliefs that I absolutely despise. Because you are telling me, why don't you talk about religion and stuff like that? Because I'm going to say bad things that they're going to give me strikes. So if you come from any religion that they say that you have to live with your parents no matter what and forgive them no matter what, or if you come from an oppressive culture like Indian or Asian culture that they say that you live with them, this is very fertile ground for enmeshment. I'm going to describe several behaviors of enmeshment. If you can relate, I'm sorry, I can definitely relate. One is emotional contamination. If I feel bad, you should also feel bad. That happens in a lot of families, in a sense of, recently my father had something very bad happening that upset him and my mother, and that was very rare, but he called me and he was extremely upset, and I asked him how are his cats, because he also has cats, and he started yelling at me and he started saying, how can you be like that, how can you be so calm? And I reminded him that he is the one who called me and we are both adults and I don't have to be upset. And he got mad and he hung up. When I was a kid, that was a daily thing. He would come home from work, like from the army, when he was returning because he was deployed. And if he had a bad day, we all needed to have a bad day. If he had a good day, we all needed to be cheerful. I remember that there was one time when I was a teenager and I had broken up with some boy over some bullshit that I don't even remember anymore. And I was crying, and he literally punished me because he had some good news about real estate and he wanted to go out to eat, and I had been dumped by my boyfriend an hour ago, and I was crying, and he didn't want me crying, and he said, you have to be happy. Why can't you be happy for the good news? And it's like my news didn't exist. So when you are with a narcissist or with an enmeshed person in general, could be an undiagnosed schizophrenic, you are not allowed to have your own feelings. That leads to, essentially, you forget how to be in touch with your feelings. You're angry and you don't know how to express it, or you don't know what it even means. Another thing that may happen is that every time as a kid you try to express a healthy emotion, people tell you that you can't be mad to your parents, it's disrespectful. You can't be sad, it's disrespectful. So that leads to addiction. You try to cope with addiction, you try to cope with food, you try to cope with relationships or with sex. And no one really talks about it. When you're enmeshed, there also could be ongoing emotional incest. Emotional incest, in my opinion, is terrible because, again, we don't talk much about it, but it fucks up your future relationships. In a sense of, Kim had an extreme emotional incest with his mother. His father is a cheater. If you have watched my channel, you know about the stuff. If you haven't, I'm going to give you a very brief summary. His father is a cheater for over 20 years. His mother clearly doesn't have sex with him. They are in a dead bedroom. So she would always barge into Kim's room when he was sleeping, gaming, studying, doesn't matter. She would barge without knocking. And she would sit there to complain about his father for hours and hours and hours and say extremely inappropriate things. That his father is a loser, that they don't have sex, that he's going to saunas all the time, which we all know it's a code name for gay bathhouse. That he doesn't make money, and if Kim told her, can you please stop, or can you talk about it with him, she would be abusive verbally and emotionally, or she would start crying and whining and things like that. When that happens, when one parent is creating a spouse, like a fake spouse, okay, a spouse substitute from the child, or a friend substitute, the other partner, usually if they're unhealthy, they just get resentful. And because they cannot take the resentment out on their husband or their wife, they start resenting the kid. So Kim told me that his father was extremely distant, that he would actually abuse him, threaten to kick him out all the time, call him a parasite, call him a loser who can't get women. And every time Kim would bring home a girlfriend, the girlfriend would be treated like shit, and eventually she would run away, and so on. One thing that happened with me that was enmeshment is that my mother didn't try to use me as a surrogate spouse, but she tried to use me as a surrogate support system. That I grew up, because my mother went back to college when I went to college, because, you know, narcissists, you can't do something for yourself, they have to do the same. I had to do her assignments when she didn't have time. I had to help her with her homework when she didn't have time, and it was hell to pay if I didn't. And when you are in this situation, you grow up to accept horrible treatment as normal because you don't know any better. I was extremely isolated. I was not allowed to socialize with other kids apart from a couple of kids that they were also super enmeshed. Looking back, there's a siren, I don't know what's going on. And what was happening is that I was trying to fill up all of this abuse with relationships. That's why I was constantly dating, and I became anorexic, and I didn't know what was going on. I was going into so much therapy and no one was pointing this out. The situation with my father was more emotionally incestuous in the way that early on I expressed to my father the desire to live in other countries. I don't consider a good life when you have to go like a stupid tourist for 1 week in one country, and then the rest of your life you're here working 9 to 5 and living Groundhog Day. And he would be on the phone and he would be screaming and saying, how can you do this to me? We're going to be apart if you go so far, like some kind of clingy boyfriend, not like a father. And the main problem with enmeshment is that you are not allowed to make your own choices and even to make your own mistakes. You have to make the same choices your family is making. For example, the most common profession when you are enmeshed is working at the family business. If your parents are straight, you have to be straight. If your parents have a specific religion, you have to have the same religion. If your culture says that women get married and have kids, you have to get married and have kids. If your culture says that men don't cry or men don't show sadness or men aren't afraid, you have to hide all of your feelings. And you realize that this is a disaster long term, right? You can't live life in a fake show pretending you are part of some collective. This happens a lot, I believe, in Asian culture because there is all of this Confucianism. For me, if you want to point out cancer in humanity, Confucianism is one of the tumors sitting away Asian people. It's really sad. Collective mentality. I say those things because you're going to say, okay, Persephone, Tales from the Crypt video, you're talking about your bullshit childhood again, no one cares about that shit, you don't even show your boobs. What is that about? The problem is that when you escape this ecosystem, if you can escape it, and you are out in the real world, the consequences are following you, and they are the reason you fail in pretty much everything you try to do. For example, if you grew up being told constantly what to do, when you grow up, you may either be someone who needs to be constantly what to do, some passive, unattractive person, or the opposite, to take the abusive role and tell everyone else what to do all the time. Or you may be so profoundly lonely if you are a more sensitive person. Even as a kid, you pick up that you're surrounded by people, your family members, but no one is there for you. You exist as a tool to cover other people's needs, like similarly to what Asian tiger moms do, that you have to be a good student because your mom is this immigrant or your mom is this abused person and she only has her kids to show off as a success. So what happens is that you learn that there is so much loneliness that you need to get out of there, and some people like me end up getting married very young or end up in toxic relationships or end up doing the first job that was ever presented to them, anything to escape. The message is, if everyone needs me to be an adult so much and I don't have needs, then I should much rather be an adult ASAP, have that family ASAP, so that I'm left alone. So what happens in this case is that when you experience accidental loneliness, by the way, I read recently in another place that accidental loneliness does not exist. That if you feel this huge hole in your chest and you feel constantly lonely, it's because your family sucked. They couldn't cover your needs. You didn't learn to attach and to relate with other people, and you constantly feel that you're all alone and abandoned in this world, and that feeling doesn't go away just because you turn from a child into an adult. So you go outside in the world and you don't know what is normal, what is up, and what is down. So a very common situation for people in enmeshed relationships with their parents is to be in enmeshed relationships with their partners. And I say this because it was a very big breakthrough for me, that I realized why I'm so deeply unhappy being married to Kim. There are so many people who have been asking me, and I didn't really want to answer because I didn't have answers, but I've promised to always keep it real on my channel, so I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. What's going on is that we still live together because there is this pandemic and no one can travel anywhere, but the situation was terrible and I was constantly daydreaming about finding new love, finding someone else, moving out, and so on. And I really, really hated Kim so much. And we had multiple fights, and I'm going to admit here that I said some very racist, terrible things. I told him I'm never dating Asians again, you're just a boring exploiter. You just want to have someone to get things done, like some kind of boring business partnership. I want romance, I want love, I want a lover. I don't want some kind of person that is nagging me. And every day that was passing, I was becoming more and more mad at him. And I realized it's because, without knowing, Kim transferred the enmeshment element of his parents' marriage and life with me. For example, we are supposed to have, like, the fact that we have one income, that the 50% of what I make has to go to him, to live in the same house. It's, for me, I feel that I'm constantly suffocated with a chain around my neck, that I didn't marry to not have any individuality whatsoever. Of course, even if you are a victim of your circumstances, I'm not going to blame you, because I realized something that I want to be fair to him. His parents' enmeshment is 50 times, 100 times harsher than my enmeshment with my parents. At least In my case, if you could go get into a college, you could go no matter where that college was. It wasn't easy, but I was able to do it. In his case, he was never allowed to study away from home. He was never allowed to get a job away from home. It's like this Asian tiger momming that is like a cockroach cancer. It takes you away. So I decided to have this conversation with him and to tell him that, you know, this is what happened. Do you want to read that stuff? Do you want to watch that stuff? And he told me that he also understands that the same thing happened to him, and he actually apologized for the first time in his life, and it wasn't a fake apology, about the fact that, yeah, we have become deeply enmeshed. A lot of his choices contributed to that, and he understands why I'm so unhappy. The way I try to do things, by emotionally getting involved with other people, or by flexing money, or by just being a psycho on the internet, was not the best way. And I told him, I can care for you, I can support you, because I don't want you to be enmeshed forever, but I cannot see you as a romantic partner. That after 5 years of enmeshment, I don't want to say the cliche, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, but it would be pretty close. That I started this channel hoping to help people escape abuse, not to enable their abuse. And I commit that I have so much work to do in the area of enmeshment to understand things about myself. And I realized that unless we get to a point where I can actually say that my parents and Kim's parents don't affect me, because Kim's mother is still making fake accounts to harass me. Her business went under and she has nothing to do. She was forced to sell it at a bad price. She has no savings. I don't know what's going to happen to this dirty scammer, but she's just spending all her day making fake accounts to send harassing messages, which is pretty terrible, you know? So I was always thinking that people who said that you have to be good, feeling good single before you date someone else were morons. I remember when I was like 19, I would say, how stupid are you? How much of a frigid bitch are you to say you're good single? What's good about being single? I need attention. I need sex. I need people to take care of me. My family is horrible. They don't take care of me. I need support. I need this. I need that. Now I look back and I'm thinking, holy hell, maybe what that expression meant. It means that you need to not be enmeshed and to not cultivate enmeshment, to not need other people around you constantly in a desperate attempt to try to fix this loneliness that your family of origin created. And I had said that I'm not going to talk too much about Eurasian Tiger in 2021, but I believe that he also has the same problem, that he has said so much about the fact that he's fantasizing about divorcing his wife and being his own person and he can never do it. I believe that when you are enmeshed, you attract other people who are also enmeshed. And I think that his marriage is an enmeshed joke, in a sense of, imagine that his wife never even cut the umbilical cord with her parents. The parents still live in the same house as Eurasian Tiger and her. So I think that his family, if it was something like Kim's family, it must have been pretty horrible, the usual Asian Tiger momming, and he developed this desperate fear of, how am I going to be alone and how am I going to make it in the world, and my wife is all I have, my marriage is all I have, and you feel that you have to sacrifice your individuality to actually not get back into that hell of loneliness, that abyss of loneliness that you were as a kid. And I read a test that some experts said about enmeshment, that if you catch yourself saying about someone, if this person changed, I would be happy, then you are deeply enmeshed and you have to start taking actions for individuation ASAP. Because it's not even codependency, it's worse than codependency, because I believe that at least the codependent, in my opinion, gets some sense of satisfaction by being the martyr. I didn't feel happy protecting him from his parents. I felt wronged, I felt like a sucker, I felt that I'm sacrificing so much and I'm getting nothing back. So the codependent at least has their delusion that they are the saint who are helping their spouse or whatever. And I believe that in Eurasian Tiger's case, when your entire marriage was built in enmeshment, it's going to be as much of a failure as mine was, because it never happened for the right reason. No one can rescue you from that loneliness. You have to reparent yourself and fix it slowly by dumpster diving to your childhood and finding what went wrong, which is not that something that I have I've barely started to do. I have a lot of repressed stuff going on, but I believe it's necessary, and a lot of people are going to say it's necessary. So in that sense, he's sitting there with his wife fantasizing about what could be, and he's writing to the Reddit cancer hole about, I want to divorce, but I'm unfulfilled, and people are telling him that you're selfish, or some people say just run, the usual Reddit advice, run, divorce. By the way, if you want to do one good thing about yourself in 2021, please delete Facebook and Reddit. They're the cancer holes of humanity. But what he says, I think, and I cannot speak on behalf of anyone, okay, just an assumption. What he says means, I want to have an identity, I want to be an individual. And let's face it, you can be an individual having sex with one person for the next 50 years. Unless you have done so much work with yourself and you truly found your soulmate and you met after you had many experiences or after you did the things you wanted to do, which is like what, 2% of the population. You cannot build an identity while enmeshed. First, you have to detach from enmeshment, fix the bullshit that your parents created, and then started dating other people without pressure, started being friends with other people without pressure. And I was really shocked to realize that I was always running away from what happened with my parents. That I was making friends with people, not because I wanted a friend, but because I was so lonely. I was so upset that I don't have a family, that they don't know me, that they don't care to know me, that everything they say, they always shut it down. Or I would have relationships with men to call me, to remind to me that I'm not just the autistic, ugly creep that no one ever wants. So the relationships and the friendships weren't even about the people that I was involved with. It was about my huge need to prove myself something and feel less lonely for even a few minutes. And the problem with that, the most important part of this video, because I'm not going to make it like some huge rambling, the problem with that is after all of this enmeshment disaster, after your parents used you as a substitute companion, as a substitute friend, as a substitute husband or wife, at the end of the day, they don't love you. And you are having huge unmet needs from a child who doesn't have, I'm going to call it mother because the mother is the primary caretaker. So you go to an adult relationship starving. I realized it with Kim and I pointed it out to him and he was shocked. Kim told me at some point, you never loved me, you're just a psychopath. And I told him, my love language, please look up love languages, it's very useful. My love language is acts of kindness. That's how I show my love. So I'm the only person, that the only thing that stands between you and the monsters in your family, that millipede mother of yours, that cockroach. And I've endured so much harassment from your friends who called me a visa hunter, who called me Russian hooker, who called me names, who actually sent other people to send messages that on a daily, not even weekly basis, I get hate messages from people because I'm AMWF and they are racist. And you are saying that I never loved you and I never cared about you. And what happens is that Kim's mother never loved him. And when you are married, you try to cover the needs that you haven't met in childhood from your partner, okay? Normal people don't have too many unmet needs. When you come starved in a marriage, essentially you expect me to be your white mother and love you unconditionally. And I cannot love a man unconditionally. If I had children, maybe I would be able to love my child unconditionally because it's a different nature of a bond. But love, romantic love, has terms and conditions. I can't just be there and give and never take anything back. And I told him, sit down with yourself and think realistically. How many women would have done what I did to help you when she stole the credit cards and she racked them up to several dozens of thousands of dollars in debt? How many women would go out of their way to save you? They would have just walked away, especially Asian women. Let's be real here. So, if you are this hot mess of unmet needs, and you go searching for love in all the wrong places, and no one loves you the way you want to be loved, and like I said, I don't exclude myself from this. It will never go away unless you go dumpster diving in childhood and find what went wrong. And I'm sorry to say, but some of your super enmeshed relationships have to end. Some have to change, And new relationships have to be formed that they are all actually going to cover some of your needs. Because no matter how enmeshed Eurasian Tiger was in his past sad, horrific life, it's not just the enmeshment. His wife has never read his book, for example. She doesn't even know him. For me, as a fellow writer, to have a person that hasn't even read my books and wants to date me, I would say, bye. It was good while it lasted. It's a part of me, part of my identity that you don't even have the interest to get to know. It's a crucial part of me. So it's also incompatibility. So to summarize this video, I don't want to make it some incoherent rambling again. In your childhood, you're used to cover other people's needs. You are not allowed to explore and to find out who you really are and who you want to be. You are not allowed to make mistakes. Possibly you even operate on a set of rules even now as an adult about your religion, about your sexuality, about your status, if you are married or unmarried, if you have kids or you don't have kids, about your profession. And all of that has created extreme deprivation that you try to fill up with many coping things, from addiction to eating disorders, to sex, to relationship addiction, to overstaying in toxic relationships out of massive fear of loneliness. And you have to do the work with yourself, if you can, with a specialist even better, to fix that. Otherwise, it's not going to go away. And I want to end this video with the people that they actually approach me for femdom. These people are actually the toxic part of subs in fandom, or even the toxic part of fans. This is not even a kink thing. That there are people who approach me and they think that they found my videos and we are soulmates. If you see the previous year, it's so interesting that I have videos where I complain so much about those people that I hate them. For example, my female stalker. And now that I see back, it's like those people were trying to get enmeshed with me. That they are no longer under the direct influence of their family of origin, but they try to replicate the same thing that happened in their family with strangers. Because it would be so shocking to me. I would say, so you sent messages to an internet stranger saying that you're soulmates, saying that you want to meet them, say that you want to live with them. Are you crazy? I had strangers asking me to be my live-in slave, and I would say, why would they take a stranger into my house? Because that stranger, instead of a heart, they have a hole in their chest. And they could take any risk for some temporary enmeshment, some temporary recreation of what happened with their family of origin. Can you imagine how dangerous that is? It can be extremely dangerous, especially if you're female, unfortunately. So, what I think is happening is that if you don't take the steps to work on yourself, there is a pretty high chance one day it will all come crashing down to destroy you. There are people who developed psychosomatic illnesses and died. There are people who ended up exploited by other people and abused and died. There are people who simply never thrived, never reached their potential, and live sad lives in the closet. And I say this, I was a person that I really hated Eurasian Tiger. There was a time where I wished him death, the most horrible death every day. And now I've gotten to the point to feel sorry for him, because despite the fact that he was a closeted homosexual, and despite the fact that he was a shitty friend, I see now what he has been through, and I feel some, limited empathy, in a sense of, imagine having to be this fake Christian in this arranged marriage that is essentially, doesn't have real love. His wife is also a dependency, some kind of person that she married him to not be a leftover. Imagine that. He told me that. I see now completely different eyes. She married him to avoid something else. In my opinion, now, you have to be with someone because you enjoy each other's company and you enrich each other's life. Doesn't matter if you're friends, lovers, whatever. You shouldn't be with someone because you are a half and you need some other half, or you are running away from your parents like Kim did, or you are running away from your own abuse like I did. When you do that, it's going to work for just a bit at best, and then it's not going to work. And I think the same thing happens to Hiding in My Room, in my opinion, that I see that he never talks about his family, and both his mom, I don't know about his dad, but his mom seems very trashy. She seems like the type of person that she doesn't emotionally connect with her kids and always nags and probably abusive. So again, I'm the psychiatrist to the murder here. I'm not supposed to diagnose or talk shit about people, but the sad news is that Eurasian Tiger's marriage is 100% doomed, and he's never going to be happy. And I could with confidence say the same about Kim. I told Kim that after everything that has happened, If you don't want to stop pathological gaming and addiction and work on yourself, I'm not going to be here for you. And again, when I'm saying that, I've also made a serious decision and I want to commit to that on my channel since it's January and it's the year where we usually set New Year's resolutions. I'm done seeking for people in all the wrong places as well. Which means I'm never again dating anyone from online and I'm never again becoming friends with anyone from online until I am in a financial enough state to meet them in real life within a week or two for a cup of coffee or something. And of course, after the pandemic is under control. I say that because I realized, thanks to Eurasian Tiger, something good came out of it, that I was talking to him all day, every day for a year, and there were still so many things that he was hiding. So that just chatting for the sake of chatting doesn't guarantee anything, doesn't guarantee compatibility. If I had met him in real life, even for, like I said, a cup of coffee, you can detect so much in real life communication that you cannot detect by chatting. Same thing that happened with Kim, that had I traveled to LA back then and spent even a weekend with his horrid mother and his friends, I would not have married him. So please don't send me dating proposals, don't send me friendship proposals. There's no point. And work on yourselves as well, because I had someone who really bothered me recently that he sent me a picture on OnlyFans. I'm going to make yet another warning about this. He sent me his picture on OnlyFans and he said, "What do you think about my picture?" You cannot manipulate me with such nonsense. I don't think anything about your picture. If you think I'm the type of person that I'm aroused just by random pictures, I'm sorry, you don't even understand how women work at all. Okay, there are exceptions to that. Like if you are a male model, if you are a K-pop star, you can send me your picture and I'm going to be interested. If you're the usual awkward, shy, beta guy, I couldn't care less. Okay, brutal but necessary to know. So please don't send me things. What do you think about me? Would you date me? This and that. No, I wouldn't date you. Right now, I want to focus on my self-development and how I'm going to help myself have a semi-normal life and not on dating randoms online. No more online fantasy relationships. No more online fantasy friendships. And if you see me get carried away by someone and talking like that, call me out. Okay, thank you for watching.